live comments.
We are live for a special Bladtcast. Welcome to the Bladtcast. Jacob Downey in the live chat. Before we even were, he was there 2 minutes before us, saying 2 minutes, people, and quiet on the set. Thank you, Jacob. I'm not quite sure what time zone you're in, but I'm going to just assume it's ours because it's midnight on the East Coast. Right now, it is myself, Christian Blatt, and the one and only Mr. Jeff DeRay here live with me. Will Sterling coming right up. And by coming right up, I mean coming right up, the one, the only Mr. Will Sterling. And I remember now from the last time we did StreamYard, it was like almost halfway or all the way through the show. And I figured out that I can do it like the Zoom boxes, which I like a lot better. This setup, I think, is much better. So going live, maybe against better judgment and precautions, but Will Sterling and I were trading messages earlier today. Say hello, Will Sterling.
Hello, Will Sterling.
And we were, some of you may remember, we were supposed to live tweet Kiss Meets the Phantom of the Park right now. We should be starting it. We should be making Cracking Wise.
Kevin Scott is very confused right now.
He's a little confused.
He's like, I push play. Where are you guys?
Yeah, no, I messaged him, and he's just like, all right, just let me know when. But we should be Cracking Wise about the opening credits right now. But instead, we thought, obviously, this isn't the time to do that, especially on a platform like Twitter, where I think that would really irritate everyone who follows us to read that. And also like, come on, guys, you know, but we're hoping to do it next week. We'll let you know. But then we thought like, well, yeah, we don't want to really get caught up in everything that's going on and make jokes about a terrible Kiss movie. But then we thought maybe it'd be interesting to actually talk about it. And we asked Jeff, and Jeff, you didn't hesitate. You were on board, right?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like it's all anyone should really want to talk about. It's just, I mean, I guess especially living in this city, it's like, how can you not be focused on this? Like, it was impossible for me to get my work done today.
Well, yeah, because I live in Burbank, and we had a 5 p.m. curfew that they told us at 1 p.m. You know, and whatever the reasons are for it, I'm sure they're looking out for people for the most part. But you'd have to think, okay, I mean, could you just? It would have been great to know in the morning, but whatever. I mean, there were a lot of things planned, but I guess we're getting ahead of ourselves, and I think it's easy to kind of have a starting point where you feel like, at least for the most part, everybody seems to agree that, you know, a lot of times when there's an incident, like any kind of police brutality incident, a lot of times there is differing opinion about like, well, what happened before the video and you know, what really happened. And this doesn't seem to be one of those. I'm going to ask you first, Will, are you surprised that in general people see it and say, yeah, that's wrong, they murdered this guy? You know what I mean? Like, usually there's usually people trying to give another side. And that part, at least this starting point of talking about the George Floyd video, is that everybody seems to go like, yeah, that's wrong. Even.
Yeah, but I mean, like, this video is a lot longer, but we've seen this video before, like a million times. And I think it's only also because people are in quarantine and in a pandemic and don't know what else to do that like are really being brought face to face with this kind of thing. But I mean, you look at, I don't know, Philando Castile and Alton Sterling and all these other things that have video evidence to back this thing up where nobody was really arguing. Like, I think people use that excuse to not feel the torment it must feel to watch someone die on video, where they're like, well, there's all this stuff that led up to this. And then there's like no eyewitness accounts of like, yeah, he was like setting fire to buildings and shooting people in the street. That's why they killed him. Like, it's never, that story like doesn't exist ever. So I'm not surprised, but I feel like there's not a whole lot left for people to feel other than like this has really come to a head, as we're seeing publicly and in everything that's going on, because of everything we're already going through.
Yeah, I mean, I think that, I don't know. I mean, I guess what you can say is that, maybe because we've been here enough times, that part of the conversation isn't happening, at least this time. That doesn't mean that look, unfortunately, there will be a next time. Will that be any better than this, or will it revert? It's hard to say, but I don't know. I mean, I think that.
Well, what do you mean better? What do you mean better than this?
Well, I think that, could there be a better response in the immediacy? You know what I mean? Like, I feel like people responded to that video in the right way, whereas usually there's division and there's not a coherent response. And I'm sure there are detractors, but I think for the most part, everybody that I see, I mean, and we'll obviously end up talking more about him a little later, but even President Trump said after that video that what was in the video was wrong, and I think that, look, would either of you have been shocked if he'd been like, well, we have to hold that judgment for what happened there? I bet this is a bad guy. Yeah. So I wouldn't have been surprised. So I have to say I was surprised by what he did say. Sure. He could have said more. We'll talk about that too. Jeff, I wanted to kind of get your thoughts. Sort of, we're only talking right now in this very moment about the video, but your thoughts kind of obviously on what we've seen, but the reaction to it as well.
It was surprising, or it was like, it gave me hope, I guess, because it felt like finally what I was seeing, everybody was seeing. It was like there was no possible excuse. No one was trying to make an excuse. No one was trying to justify it, because it was clearly an inexcusable thing caught on tape. It's like it started off with a non-violent crime. There was further proof that there was never any resisting. And then you have minutes upon minutes of people desperately pleading for these cops to show like the most basic ounce of humanity and checking and making sure someone's okay, you can hear like gargling and death knelling. Like, it's disgusting. There shouldn't be any other reaction to it. Like, you're a psychopath if you don't watch that and your heart breaks because you just watched something awful happen. Because again, I mean, I don't think under really any circumstance you should be choked to death ever, no matter what you did in that situation to like get you there. Even if you're, Jeffrey Epstein, you shouldn't be choked to death when you're getting like arrested by the police.
No, but I mean, for some reason, if you have to, if this were a different situation and you have to restrain someone, you would do something to knock them out. You wouldn't, well, I'm going to choke them for 7 minutes. Because obviously so much could go wrong, so yeah, it's not a rational response to it. And, I think that at least, in relation to other cases like this, the police officers were, could have been fired quicker, but they were fired, within the first couple of days, which you have to say that that's not usually the case. And then there's a lot of people that, obviously the main cop was charged with murder, and this was before the protests and things started. There were a lot of people who were like, yeah, okay, what about the rest of them? And I mean, just from a practical standpoint, you do need to build the case against them and figure out what to charge them with, because you want it to stick. You don't want to charge them with the wrong thing and then they get off on a technicality. So to me, that's why the other cops haven't been charged even still at this point, because you need to charge them for the right thing. But none of this is, it's still shitty, but I at least that I understood. It's like, okay, the first guy, you see what it is, you can charge him with murder. I think you can charge other people with murder, accessory to murder, manslaughter. I don't know. I'm not a lawyer. So, and I think that not happening fast enough was kind of the little pebble that started to roll down the hill. I don't even remember what day that was. Was that Wednesday? It's
Thursday.
Thursday. Yeah. Okay. So I don't know, but I think that nobody comes out okay in that. You have the one cop that isn't. He's just watching Lookout, and I guess doesn't see somebody filming. I don't even quite know. But anyway, so he's just there. So we can get past the video part now. But it's funny that siren could be any of us. There, anywhere that any of us are. That's
I'm
you,
right down the street from the looting that happened in Van Nuys.
Oh yeah, Steve, podcast one, Steve sent me a video of crazy shit going on.
Yeah. So there was an event, a protest in Van Nuys, and what I knew from looking at
further, the looting was closer. I want to distinguish that they were separate things.
Well, no, and look, that's the important distinction for sure, and we can certainly jump over to that part. So you have the protests, and then you have the violence, the vandalism, and then you have the looting, and those are not the same thing. You know, I mean, it's are there people that go from protesting into some of the destructive behavior? I'm sure, but that's not really, those aren't the same two events. You see, there's a lot of people that are, you know, standing and trying to get people to not, you know, deface stores or to loot. Like, to me, the looting for the most part is people that are just honestly opportunistic assholes, either people who want free shit. And, you know, grown men stealing Legos from Target. I mean, it's none of it's funny, but there's these moments where you see things and you're like, oh, in a normal situation, I'd laugh at this. But then it's, you know, and just like, you know, white guys stealing lots of, you know, sneakers from Pacific Sun or, you know, the Vans store, you know, you see a lot of these things. And there's, I guess, questions about who these groups of people are. There's a lot of, you know, the interesting thing about living in this age of viral videos is you're seeing a lot of things like, you know, there's an African-American woman who is just screaming at this car full of what look like, you know, affluent 20-something white kids who are giving out bricks to groups of black men, encouraging them to throw them at things. And this woman is just yelling at them. It's like, what the fuck are you coming into our neighborhood and giving, you know, you're going to get them killed. And, you know, they're just like, yeah, whatever, you know? So, and you don't know, like, oh, are these people that are just assholes, or is this part of something bigger? And, you know, when you see sort of these mixed things happening, I'll ask you first, Jeff, what are your thoughts? And from what you've seen and what you've read, you know, what are you thinking about protesters, people who are very affected by what happened and want there to be changed, and then the violence and the looting? Your thoughts on the two groups?
I think the group, they seem to be pretty distinct groups. It's like, that's another thing that I think on one hand is encouraging in this, is you're watching people out there trying desperately to keep the waters from getting muddied, trying desperately to keep the message clear of like, no, we're trying to protest peacefully and make change, and like stepping in front of buildings, all that kind of stuff. I think it's good. You don't want to see people trying to stab people running out of Target. That's bad. And it just seems like so many people, too many people are trying to act selfishly while other people are trying so hard to come together. It's just like, it's heartbreaking. Like, it makes me sick to my stomach. I didn't even sleep last night. I literally stayed up all night just watching videos, because it's like the adrenaline from watching one would just get me so amped up. Like, and I'd try and like cool down, and I'd see something else, and I'd just like, yeah, I was awake all night just because this whole situation just makes me feel so powerless and so frustrated. And it's like, I'd like to be able to do more, but I feel like if I went to something like that, I'd just end up being one of the dickheads who's like punching somebody and making everything worse. So I feel like the best thing I can do is like keep to myself, because I'm not going to be any help to anybody. And I just wish people would take that perspective. Like, let's all just do something good for everybody. Like, we were trying so hard with the social distancing and taking care of each other. We had like a nice little let's do this together attitude for a minute, and then everything starts to fall apart. And then this happened, and you thought for a minute like, all right, we're doing it again, we're like coming together, it might happen. And then it's like, I think right before this, I was watching some of the local news broadcasts because I was trying to get information about what was happening in my neighborhood, because it's like I've just been hearing choppers circling and shit. And so watching that is just particularly frustrating for me, because the coverage spends like a minute talking about, oh, it's so fucked up that these looters are trying to muddy the waters, and then spends the rest of the time just talking about the looters and how they're looting and showing the looting. And it's like, so then don't muddy the waters. Focus on the other part. Don't spend the rest of the time talking about what you said isn't the point.
Yeah, look, and I'll ask you the same question in a second, Will. But look, when it comes to the media, they're hardly the enemy of the state, the way they've been characterized in the past by the president. But they are terrible, and they're showing all the looting because what's more interesting video? What is more compelling? The video of like a police officer, hugging the African American protester. You'll see that a little bit on social media, but what you'll really see is people, stealing, TVs and stuff. That's what they want to show. So the narrative that they tell is the one that they feel like is going to keep people tuned in, regardless of how accurate a picture that paints. Will, I wanted to get your thoughts sort of on the same thing, the protesting, but then also the rioting / looting being sort of separate from that.
I've thought a lot about this too, because there's a perspective of this also that I'm sure a lot of people would disagree with, but it takes a good amount of consideration to understand where some of these things can come from and can happen. And I think that most of the people who become looters and all these kind of things are opportunists. I think that yes, of course, there's a big thing about that, and the media really focuses on that, but that there's also an element that is understandable of people who can get swept up in feeling disenfranchised and feeling 400 plus years of oppression and other things being mounted against them, that they can get caught up in the moment and feel that something is worth taking because they deserve it. And there's an element to which I kind of can't disagree. I'm not encouraging or inciting violence or any of those things, but to be in a crowd where it's easy to get carried away. And I think a lot of people have witnessed and felt this even on a small scale, from chipping in to peer pressure or other things, all the way to being an accomplice, like one of these cops in the video. Like this guy just stood there and watched this thing. You see the two of them, right? It's the man with his knee on him, and then whoever that other cop is, his partner or whoever the fuck.
There was other ones, they had their knees on his back. There's another angle where the other multiple cops on him at one point.
Right. So you have all these guys contributing to this thing happening. Nobody's saying this is wrong, we should stop this. And somebody had tweeted, and I thought it was very astute. If you have 10 bad cops and 1,000 good cops, but those good cops don't turn in the 10 bad cops, you have 1,010 bad cops. And I know that there's more good cops than there are bad cops out there. I've always known that. We've seen it in videos, like you're saying. But so when I'm not justifying people who are out here as opportunists, but I would be remiss to say that we shouldn't understand, or at least try to have some kind of understanding for why people of color could get swept up in feeling systemic racism lobbied against them and not feel like they should push back. That's not something I necessarily say is okay, but it is something that I understand and recognize. And another thing that people were saying was like, we rose up in Boston for fucking attacks on tea to push back against the British government because they were taxing us right and left, and people died in the Boston Tea Party. And so now we have people of color rising up saying like, yeah, well, this has been our reality for hundreds of years. And there's some violence that comes along with this, and people are like, how dare you not be able to hold yourselves in the highest esteem, even though we've abused and built our entire country on your backs for free for hundreds of years. So I know that's a lot, but there are more than one side, I think, to the looting and the frustration and the anger and the violence. It's not as simple as just like a group of people coming in to do something. There is more than one side to the story.
No, absolutely. And look, look, anybody who's watching the video sees the three of us, and there's a lot of levels that we can't relate to any of this just on a personal level. We can understand it from afar. We can have it explained to us. We can do our best to try and grasp the reality of it, but we don't know what it feels like. LA's under curfew right now. If any one of the three of us were driving right now and pulled over by police, they would say, like, you need to go home. And I doubt we'd even get a ticket, in all honesty.
Yeah.
So, but obviously that would not be the case if we weren't, if the three of us weren't white guys. So I try to understand that there could be this level of anger and lashing out at anything, lashing out at police, I'm not condoning violence on things, but you can at least understand, let's go set that police car on fire. Let's, throw bricks through the window of the police station. I'm going to go spray some, I'm going to vandalize City Hall. These are all things that are like, I get all that. And, if in that moment it's like, let's go break this window. The Apple store and Nordstrom were two places at the Grove here in Los Angeles that was some of the earlier looting. And you're like, these huge corporations that, they're happy to take your money, but they don't do anything. I understand all of it. But it is sort of this idea that it's separate people who aren't feeling any of that. And they're just like, so I understand people that would feel that way. I just don't think that's the majority of what it is.
It's not. That's what I mean to say, is that it's not. But I do think that that's a voice and a thing that we have to recognize as being true.
So the big narrative that you see a lot, and why it's really hard to talk about this and comment or post, because I don't know, to me it just seems trite to post things, and people are like, you being silent is like saying it's okay. It's like, no, but sometimes you don't know what to say. And some people have just written, like, look, I don't know what to say, but and it's fine. But in not knowing what to say, sometimes it's just, sometimes the silence is because you're listening. But I understand, because again, I'm a white guy. I don't get to say, it doesn't matter what I feel like is okay. It's just sort of the way that I approach it. But the thing that you're hearing a lot is this idea of, you're reacting to the destruction of property, but that's not as important as the loss of a life. And they're like, no, it's absolutely not. It doesn't mean that it's okay, though. You can say, like, this is really bad, and that doesn't mean, but this was fine. This didn't bother me. And I don't feel like people are saying that, but there must be, because I just don't necessarily follow the people who are saying that. And look, I follow all kinds of people. I've seen a lot of things in the last 3 days, from, not a huge wide range, but it's I've seen some differing opinions, but not so much on some of the stuff. I don't know about you guys, like what you've actually seen from people you don't know. Just like, it's weird because Twitter, I guess you'll see if somebody likes a post, even if you don't follow the person they like. I don't quite know what the algorithm is. So I see a lot of people that I don't follow. I see them posting things, and I'm like, okay. But so I don't know. So that's my thought, is that, like, no, the loss of life, the treatment against all people of color, for the entirety of the history of this country, 244 years, that's all that. But I think it is okay to say, like, look, there's a small business owners, it's not all just like, they threw a trash can through Target's window. Walmart's going to be okay. But then it's like, yeah, but what about these other stores that, and some of them in some of the neighborhoods, it's like, okay, well, you're looting your own stores. You're looting African Americans, other people of colors. You're looting those stores. Those stores are probably going to close because they were already having a problem. And so I don't know. It's hard to it's hard to speak out against it because I guess the way people are taking it is like, oh, so you're okay with the fact that this man died. I'm like, no, but I do wonder why we're on like 4 days of, like rioting happening outside Jeff's window. I don't feel like that's happening because of police brutality in Minneapolis. Like, I don't think that's on the mind of people there. But I don't know, Jeff, what exactly is going on in Van Nuys? I haven't seen much of it because I almost never watch the news, especially stuff like this. I don't want the kids to see it. I see stuff on my phone sometimes, but I haven't really seen much of what's going on tonight.
I mean, I know there was, so essentially it's like everything was cool, copacetic. There's a big group of protesters where everything was fine. And then like most of the day things were cool. And then around like 3:00 or something, it just like people broke loose. And it's like they broke into a local pharmacy, drugs, but it was like a local mom and pop pharmacy. And like the Will was referring to our friend Steve, whose girlfriend lives very close by here. And he was looking at like a strip mall that was on fire. And those are all small businesses. These aren't like, look, I don't condone any looting, but really if you break into a Target, I'm like, well, don't do that. That's about it.
No, yeah, that's sort of what I'm saying is they're going to be okay in the long run. These huge corporations, especially CVS, Target and Walmart, who are, industries that have had tremendous profit during the coronavirus pandemic. So anyway, finish your thoughts. Sorry, Jeff.
No worries. So it's, I don't know. It's like I see these small businesses, and it's like, to me, when you see those attacked, that's what makes me feel so much like, oh, so clearly this is just a small group of dickheads just trying to make things worse, because it's like, that seems less, I mean, I hear Will's point, and I think that's a good reminder that sometimes this isn't about people wanting to do the things they do. It's just like the emotions are so high. It's just like what I was talking about. Like, I could see myself making a bad decision because of how, the emotions in this are so easily go to like 11, and then you're not thinking, you're just reacting, right? And maybe that happens, and then somebody smashes a window, and then somebody sees a smashed window and goes, yeah, let's grab some shit, right? I don't know. I can't speak to the mindset of everything that has happened, but it just seems like too much of it comes across as people, and it's like you hear the stories, right? Where it's like, okay, so this was broken into, and then they're coming systematically with duffel bags and SUVs, loading them up, and then like going off. So it's like people who had a plan to, okay, where are their protests? All right, let's strike, because the police are going to be occupied. And that's the thing that's like, if you watch, so this is one of the things they were covering, is like in Santa Monica over the weekend, right? You had the protests in one area, and then the rioting and looting in a very separate area. And the massive majority of the police force was at the peaceful protests, tear gassing peaceful protesters, leaving the looters to do what they will for however hours, right? And so now that's one of the things they've had to respond to. And one of the things that made me sick is there's a video of an LAPD like SUV cruiser swerving in and fucking hitting people, and then just swerving out and driving away, hit and run.
Yeah, that I did see. Yeah,
and it's like, I saw today, I was watching Eric Garcetti talking, and then the chief of police, and all they had to say was about what a great job the LAPD has been doing. And you're just like, what do you not get about this?
No,
like,
that's the you're doing a heck of a job, Brownie moment. It's you're taking the time to congratulate, even if you feel like you are doing a good job. It's like, yeah, nobody wants to hear that because of all the other areas where clearly you're not doing a good job. And yeah, I mean, look, I don't understand what the approach is towards rioting and looting. Obviously, you should not be shooting people who are doing those things, but you do feel like there must be a way to stop them, and I guess that's where they use the tear gas and the rubber bullets. But you're talking about focusing that energy on the the peaceful protests, which is not where they should be. They should be in the sort of the other location. And look, I saw. I knew that there was something planned for Van Nuys, and sorry that we're keeping this so local, but this is what we see living in Los Angeles. And, we all have early curfews. I saw in New York City, they have a curfew of 11 p.m. And I'm like, 11 p.m. I know that things happen late in New York, but I'm like, I feel like it should probably be a little earlier than that in a city the size of New York, but what do I know? But I knew that something was going to happen in Van Nuys, and just, you just look around on Twitter, and then you had a lot of people are like, yeah, but how about going after, how about Burbank and Glendale? Like there's more money there. And I'm like, yeah, but that's, I don't know. Cause again, that doesn't seem like people who are trying to make a peaceful point. And, there's a narrative that you're seeing, and then some of it is coming from conservative circles, but there are a number of African-American friends that I have on my personal Facebook, not just on Twitter, who are, sharing some of the videos that I referenced. There's actually at the Grove here in Los Angeles, there was an African-American woman yelling at these two white girls who were spray painting things on a Starbucks, and like sort of to cover their tracks, they put like Black Lives Matter in addition to, sort of this anti-capitalist thing. And this idea that it is like it's an organized movement, but I have people getting mad that President Trump is blaming Antifa because it's not really an organized organization. It's like, well, yeah, I mean, they don't have an LLC. They don't have letterhead, and they don't give, but it's like, it's some kind of like online movement where it's coordinated efforts. And even if it's not that, you're just like, yeah, but these are people who have a different agenda. And I think a lot of us are anti-fascist, but a lot of this movement, from what we've seen before, Occupy Wall Street and just things that have happened over the last few years, it's really like anti-capitalist. It's like, this is a group where it's like, well, we're going to throw a trash can through a Starbucks and a Bank of America. And again, these are companies that have plenty of money. You don't have to feel bad for the individual store necessarily, but like a fast food chain that happens to, a lot of times those are franchise owners, and they are sort of responsible for a lot of it. So I don't know. What do you guys think about this idea that when somebody throws around like, oh, well, this is Antifa, these white people that are coming and do you think it is coordinated like that? Do you think that that's oversimplifying it? Do you think that it's more people who are just like, well, fuck, I'm going to go down to the Grove and get a free iPad? What do you think? I'll ask you first, Will.
I think it's a mixture of everything. You're always going to get all of those people incorporated into something that's like this, because people who have nefarious alternative motives are able to hide in what's happening. And so people who are inclined to want to just like use this as an excuse to steal stuff opportunistically are going to be there, and radicals in that capacity are also going to be there in that way, and utilizes. I mean, I would not put it past two white girls to use this as an opportunity to do whatever bullshit they fucking wanted to do. And then, PS, hashtag Black Lives Matter. You know what I mean? Like, oh, I'm here for you, but they're not. And it's challenging because it's like the narrative that's given to people is whatever. I mean, you said this early on, and I think it's interesting, is that this just feels like the first time, however many years later, I mean, hundreds of years later, technically, but in terms of modern media and social media, that people are like, oh, there's like not two narratives around this story. And I think a lot about the George Zimmerman, Trayvon Martin thing, where all we have to go on is these weird bits and pieces, right? But when you look at what the evidence is, it's like that guy absolutely murdered a black kid in cold blood for doing fucking nothing besides walking through a neighborhood with a hoodie on. And somehow this man was acquitted of this thing because people spent so much time building the narrative around what fear he must have felt, whatever the fuck righteous anger he had some sort of justification, when the other side of the story was, yeah, this was a kid who was just minding his own business, and it doesn't matter where he was going or where he was coming from. There's not two sides of this. But we created that narrative. We've been creating this narrative for hundreds of years about who people of color must be if they don't fit in the box that we've put them in. And we can get to a whole conversation about white privilege and those things. I'm sure the listeners would really love that. And I want to do this as patient as possible. But we're only seeing this unrest because it's been going on for so long. Everyone's now been stuck inside their homes for so long. And you have people wielding like AR-15s and firearms protesting like, open up barbershops and restaurants. I don't want to wear a mask. Like, fuck you. And everyone's fine. But
there's it's, I can't even attribute it to anyone. I'm seeing it going around so much. You have sort of the knee-jerk response to Black Lives Matter is people who say all lives matter. And then the response to them is, you're saying all lives matter now, but 2 weeks ago you were saying that you're willing to sacrifice some old people so you can go get a haircut or sit inside at TGI Fridays, you know? Right. So, yeah, I mean, and by the way, it's funny because I assume you saw the tweet, like when we posted that we were going to do this, we only decided a few hours ago to do this.
I was in
somebody said,
Twitter.
Yeah, somebody, let's see, can I even show it? I don't think it shows up.
I was in a Twitter conversation with that person.
This one right here, right?
Yeah.
I had a response typed out that I deleted. It was just going to say, hey, Kat, looks like you had a little typo in your name. It replaced UN with an A.
See, look, I didn't even know we would get to the bell tonight.
Well,
I can't wait. Need to hear more about my so-called white privilege.
I don't know who that is, but
I don't know that person. Yeah,
I retweeted something, and they I'm using the they them pronoun because I don't know if it's a guy or a girl. It could be a Russian bot for all I know, but they added, they responded and were like, well, like, I don't understand, like, all this stuff, like, president's not responsible or involved, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So I trying to stick with how I am on Twitter. I think regardless of the people who listen to this podcast know that for the most part, except for one person in particular, that I am usually all about civil discourse and really try not to make harsh, direct, specific things when interacting with people. So I was being very patient, very understanding about this person who seemed like they had struggled through and suffered through a lot of things. But in my very patient responses was nothing but hostile and shitty. So I was like, it seems that at this juncture, all I can do is wish you well. Like, keep your heart and your mind open, because without that, like, the world's just going to be worse for it. And they were just on I don't know who this fucking person, they follow me and they follow this tweet, but maybe it's because I retweeted it. But I was like doubting. They're like, well, who's the racist now? Like, to me. And I was like, okay, this feels body at this point. So I don't know who that fucking person was, but they're very upset. If they're real and their struggle's real and they're listening, like, honestly, I feel you and I hear you. Please talk to a professional about whatever hurt's going on inside you. But, like, it's not about you. It's about the other people that we're talking about right now, people of color. That's my biggest thing, is everyone's like, well, what do you mean? Like, I've faced discrimination and challenges and hardships and had bad shit happen. And it's like, yes, absolutely. So have I. So has everybody. But the difference is that you have not faced those challenges because of your race or your ethnicity or the color of your skin. Those things have happened to you and you face challenges along the way. But inherently, like what you're saying, Christian, we could pop in our cars right now and fucking drive to San Diego and be like, I'm scared. I just want to go be with my parents. And cops will be like, go get to your dad. Go on. Go fast. Like.
Or we could be like, oh, you know what? I just wanted to go to SeaWorld. I hear that's going to open on Monday. So I'm just going to sit here in the parking lot for a week. Is that cool? Yeah, it's fine. Just clean up after yourself, kid.
We don't face those
Yeah.
hardships and struggles, and I think that is part of the reason is why I'm like, when people get angry and bad shit happens, it's not okay, but it's a byproduct of being oppressed. It's the reason we got a fucking President Trump, and we saw that feeling from the other side of people who felt marginalized and disenfranchised and not heard. And because the left didn't understand how to talk to them, we created this monster of people who are pushing back 10 times as hard, who feel represented by someone who is just this amorphous blob individual that, like, here is a push notification I just received. President Trump prompted outrage after peaceful protesters were dispersed with tear gas so he could pose for photos at a church. This is what we're fucking dealing with. And I want to hear both sides, but at this point, I'm like, this is the whole thing where you have to recognize that you were not been discriminated against because of the color of your skin. We have to be quiet for a little while, and we have to listen and make space and sit the fuck down and let a revolution happen, because it's actually not about us. It doesn't concern us. But white people make a great hobby out of sticking their nose into places to make it about us, where it's like, what if you just let people do what they needed to do and stood there to support or let something happen because that's what's happening, and didn't find a way to make it about you? But we don't know how to do that. And that is the definition of white privilege.
Well, I think that's why, white people have such glee when we, post videos of some woman being ridiculous who we call Karen, because we're all Karens. Right. Like literally we're an entire ethnicity of Karens. I've got some very Karen.
I'm a Carl. I'll be a Carl. Yeah. What's the male version of Karen?
I'm a very Karen individual.
What's the male version of Karen? Carl? No, Chris?
Caro.
Well, Christian is too close to Chris, so it can't be Chris.
Yeah.
Caro.
So it is hard to hear the other side, by the way, when the president spends the weekend in a bunker underneath the White House, not talking about this. I think there were a couple tweets about Obamagate and China, but again, there was at least a decent statement late last week about what was in the video, but then there wasn't anything, like, all weekend long. And then it comes out today, and then it's worse than the nothing. What were you going to say, Jeff?
I was going to say, did you hear about his? He had the conference call or whatever with the governors, where he's basically telling them you got to dominate the protesters, and you're all weak. And it's like a guy who literally went to hide in a fucking bunker
underground and dodged the draft fucking 10,000 times for bone spurs and whatever the fuck. He's such a pussy.
It's just so, like, and there was, I forget, it was like, I saw one thing where it was like, one governor basically was like, hey, your rhetoric is very damaging. Like, you're making things worse. I appreciate that you said this one thing, but now everything you're doing is making it worse. And he just goes, well, JB, I don't like your rhetoric. I didn't like it about the coronavirus. And I'm just like, how can you have such childish responses at such, like,
today
important times, and people not go, yo, just shut the fuck up? Like, how does that guy not go, are you seriously talking to me this way, you fucking man child? Like, why can't you stop?
What did he say today? He said, if governors, it's gonna make us look like, it's gonna make you look like jerks if you don't know how to do this. Like, jerks are called and they're running out of you. It's like, oh my God.
What he's saying is basically like, I'm gonna
stop this. You're gonna look like jerks. It's like, wow.
He's saying I'm going to send in the military if you don't get this under control. And it just highlights something that, look, a lot of people came around on Trump. There were a lot more, never Trumpers who came into like, well, second thought, I guess now I can be okay with him. But it's like, there's nothing that's less conservative than the idea of, well, clearly the states don't know what they're doing. I'm going to have to step in. And it sort of, it happened with what he was saying about some of the states that weren't as quick to reopen. It's a lot of like, all right, well, look, you clearly have to do more. You have to do it the way that we want to do it. And I always think of conservatism as the big thing being states' rights. You have a lot of people from the South will tell you that the Civil War, first of all, they don't call it the Civil War, but they'll tell you that it wasn't, of course it was about slavery, but it wasn't only about slavery, that it was about states' rights. And yet it's like, it seems like they're very quick to be like, well, clearly these states aren't actually doing things right. So the states' rights are only when I think they are right. So I'm going to have to get in. And it's just like, okay, I think that some of it as diluted and, as ridden by NutraSweet or whatever the artificial sweetener is in Diet Coke at this point, his mind is, look, a lot of it.
Well, not saccharin.
Riboflavin. No, I don't even know. But look,
stevia.
There's so much of it that's ingenious by the people around him that are just like, you put as much stuff on the governors of these states as you can. But like, yeah, it's not my fault. So it's like, yeah, so the states can reopen from this, these safer at home orders. So if they open too soon, he's like, oh yeah, I tried to get them not to do it. And if it goes really well, it's like, yeah, I gave them the freedom to do it. And then it's like with this, it's like, yeah, you guys should really step it up and stop all this rioting. And it's like, well, look, I told them to do it. And look, states that ask to have the California asked for the National Guard to come in. And it's like, yeah, look, I think it helps to have some kind of show of force, but I don't know what you do to actually stop it. And can you tell people like, no, look, this wouldn't happen in China or North Korea, especially North Korea, because you don't have the right to assembly. So you don't have to worry about people rioting, because it's like, there's 8 of you on the street. If you don't go home, we're going to shoot all of you.
Right.
So
that's the thing, is where people are like, this is happening in blue states. Where, what, blah. And it's like, yeah, because those are fucking densely populated major metropolitan areas. They're not only all blue places, but like Los Angeles, New York, like, oh, I'm sorry that these major riots concerning like 1 million people aren't happening in fucking Waukesha, Wisconsin.
Listen, Will, the very blue state of Texas had riots in Dallas. And, I just think that the weak blue state of Texas and all those dirty Texas liberals, they're just showing how weak and ballless they all are.
Fucking Beto.
Follows that kind of ideal is probably a little bitch, right? I guess that's what our all-powerful great leader Kim Jong-Trump said.
Who apparently is still alive, by the way, Kim Jong-un.
I mean, if you believe that,
I'm pretty sure that's the sequel where he gets raised by voodoo priestess so that he can walk through the water. And
there are very good people in North Korea. Okay, there are very good people there. It's bad on both sides. Okay, the South is low and the North is a little too high, and it's hard to have actually like a middle. So they're both bad.
Terrible.
Yeah. So Sean, American Patriot, and Jacob Lee Downey are having a lively chat. It's mostly the two of them talking in there. And then I did respond to this. So one of the things he said is, so this is a Bash Trump podcast now. There's been elements of that for 3.5 years. But to be fair, there's
Jeff
time.
And I have really led the charge. You've managed to really.
There's times where
be a diplomat.
Look, this is not one of the times, but there are times where I think he can actually be really funny when he does like a 76-minute press conference, and this is sort of going back like a couple years, and he's just sort of like tearing into people he doesn't like in the media. Like, it used to be kind of funny to me, and I would say like, I don't know, that was really funny, and there's things that I'm like, okay, but it's hard to not pile on right now, because you have a very eloquent post and response from former President Barack Obama earlier today, and you have President Trump talking about sending out vicious dogs. That's a direct quote. When the looting starts, the shooting starts, reference to very specific behavior in the late 60s. So this is time where there are people who can defend him on all of this. It's just we're not we're not equipped to do that because I don't see any of it being defensible. You know, there were the protesters at the White House. Obviously, whoever the occupant of the White House is, yes, you do need to keep that safe. You need to make sure that people don't. You know, I remember when Bill Clinton was president, you had all these people that were like hopping the fence all the time. People were getting really close, and you haven't heard about that in a while. But at the same time, it's like, yeah, you should make sure that that doesn't happen. That's, you know, pre 9/11 stuff is a different time period, I guess. But it's like, yeah, so you know, you don't want people getting too close, but by all indications, it was like, well, we got to clear these people out so that he can go to this church. And I don't know what he's said in the last 72 hours that's been helpful, you know, but if either of you guys in the chat feel like there's something that you feel, well, he said this, you know, he addressed that, you know, he was very quick to declare war on Twitter last week because they fact checked something about mail-in ballots, which is not really what we're talking about, but it's like, he was right on top of that. That was important to him. This, he just didn't really say much. And now he's talking and it's like, I don't know. The people around him are probably like, oh, go back to the not talking. It's fine. You've done enough now. And you know, Sean wants to know how we protect our family. And I'm the one who has a family. And
I have a family. I have a cat daughter. I have a dog daughter.
And you have a girlfriend.
And
I'll answer this, Sean. How do you protect your family from cancer? You don't. It consumes them, and all you can do is watch them die.
Right, but I don't. I believe in Sean, Jacob, or anyone else who feels the need to own a firearm to protect their family. That's just not me. Mostly because
I just think it's cute that I'm not. I actually have my NRA sharpshooter certificate that I got when I was 11 because I was a crack shot as a child and then stopped shooting guns because of Columbine. So
we all shared a boss for a while, and I know where my leanings were for a long period of time, and I was starting to go a certain way, and then Sandy Hook happened, and a lot of kids were murdered, and nobody did a fucking thing, and that's when it changed. And I'm not going to tolerate or play games with somebody who can't spell or is egging us on just for the sake of being a shit. Like, that's just not.
No, it's okay. I don't know that. I think that if I had to guess, Sean just feels very passionate about this stuff. But I know what you're saying. I know there's a lot of caps in his posts, whereas Jacob Downey was just trying out jokes before, which was entertaining, but it really didn't fit into the conversation. So yeah, look, I think that
how about the fact that none of these riots have targeted homes? Nobody's houses are being burnt down. Nobody's houses are being broken into.
Right.
Except for when the police break in to shoot you because they have a no-knock warrant. My bad.
Yeah, sorry, they killed 2 innocent women because they got the wrong house.
Legitimately, I actually don't know what you guys are
Breonna
talking
Taylor. The one that keep talking. That's Breonna Taylor.
That's the most recent one, but there was a woman
There's
before
other
that
one too. Yeah.
Is that part of this, or is that a separate incident?
That's one of the. Okay.
Yeah. I just didn't know. I mean, you know, look, if I had a job where I produced and co-hosted a podcast about topics and current events, maybe I would be up on this stuff. But, you know, since I don't, and I just do a goofy podcast about comic books and Kiss movies, I don't have to worry about it. But look, so anyway, my point is that, yeah, I mean, but to Jeff's point, actually, is sort of what I was going to say is, at the moment, I don't feel like I need to do anything to protect my home, you know, because homes don't seem to be what people are after, because this isn't angry people of color that are lashing out at white people. This is, and look, I'm not saying that you don't see any videos where black people are looting. I'm not saying that at all. But you do see a lot of white people who are, whether they're affiliated with anything or not, they're just, some people just like to go and stir shit up and make trouble. And so you see a lot of that. And yeah, they're about, what can we show on the news? What can we do? And, and a lot of what gets posted has to get fact checked. There was like a photo of a McDonald's on fire that I think on Friday was making the rounds. And then they fact checked it and was like, yeah, this is from like 3 years ago in Pennsylvania, where an actual like fire, like a grease fire or something, after hours. So a McDonald's caught on fire, and it's just a picture of it. But they're like, oh, that fit into the narrative right now. So there's a lot of that. But then there's also like in-person people that are, like people driving around giving out bricks. It's like, yeah, what'll happen if we do that?
Well, there's also some sheriffs giving water bottles to people. There's a group of black men forming a human chain around a cop who's isolated from other people to protect him from people who wanted to hurt him. There's a lot of other things that are going. The thing that drives me crazy, which is the thing that drives me crazy with anything, is that it doesn't matter what the quote unquote media or fake news or whatever is covering or isn't covering. People are going to believe the narrative they want to believe. And there's plenty of actual fake news in conspiracy theory bullshit that exists to encourage people to believe that this is some secret plot. Or
kind of like all mail-in ballots are fraudulent.
Exactly, the mail-in ballot thing. Well, COVID is like a front for whatever, and it's created this whole. There's a whole thing that people want to believe. When people are scared and they don't know how to deal with actual confrontation or conflict because they undoubtedly have had past traumas they have not dealt with, the way that they deal with it is to make themselves the center of the narrative. And if there is a conspiracy swirling around your world in which everyone is trying to get you and you're important, you're Jack Ryan, and everybody's trying to get you because your secret identity, people care about stealing your money and all this kind of, it's like, you're actually not that special. None of us, the three of us, anybody, nobody's that special. But everybody wants to believe that at that level, their safety matters, right? So it's like, well, the looters are going to come for you. I mean, people in my hometown are like, where do I buy guns? Because we're scared that the looters are going to come for us. I'm like, they're not going to come for you. People don't give a fuck about you.
There were I did see photos of there were lines down the block. There's a few large gun stores in Burbank, and there were some very large lines there. And let's see, there were a couple of things. So Sean, again, they're burning down businesses all over the country. You don't give a flying fudge. I have said that I very much don't like the fact that companies are being burned down, even like a Starbucks or a Target. It's more, those will be okay. Let's worry about the small businesses, that are already hurting from the pandemic. Literally, there are stores in Los Angeles that opened today, like was their reopening for letting people inside, under distancing rules, blah, 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 all that. But then they were like, oh yeah, we were open for 4 hours. And then we had to board up the windows and close. There's a comic book shop that I follow on Instagram, and they do some like online sales and stuff. This place, Black Cat Comics, and today was their first day to reopen. A lot of places on Magnolia Park in Burbank. It's getting very local now, I know, but they opened, and then if you look at their Instagram, they had to put boards on the windows, and they're actually spending the night there in their business. It's a small business, they're just to make sure everything goes all right. And they're like, well, maybe we'll be open tomorrow. We don't really know. We don't really know what it is. And so I care very much about all that. I, of course, also care about, police that aren't handling this well. And, we're talking about, people getting shot and gassed in peaceful protests. I don't think that that's the majority of what's happening. But I do think stopping the looting should definitely be a priority, but people still get to protest, but they're not one and the same. So to me, somebody should figure out what it is. But yeah, Jeff, I think, Jeff, you made the point that there's a narrative that's like, oh, this is all these blue state governors who aren't tough on crime, but Texas being the perfect example, that's a state that wants to be their own country. and there's a lot of people that would like Texas to be its own country, and some would say it already is. And I mean that in the strongest way and in the most favorable way possible for people that I know live in Texas. They have a very independent spirit. That's great. I like a lot about Texas, just not the Dallas Cowboys, but that's neither here nor there.
I just want to pose something to people, right? So say you were giving some crazy ultimatum, right? You're dealing with a supervillain, and they basically tell you, I will either kill this person or I will set fire to this business or thing. Do you not realize that 10 out of 10 times, if you choose to have the person killed, you're the bad guy? Like there's no equating those things. Like to say that it's more important to protect property and businesses and material wealth over people's lives, it fundamentally shows that you're a terrible human being.
Right. And I'm just trying to say that like we should definitely be worried about both. You don't want there to be the loss of life.
Of course. But this isn't about if we had everything, like if everything was the way we wanted it, this guy would never have been choked to death. But it's not. The reality is you're having to choose between, do you condone killing of innocent people or do you condone burning of innocent property? I condone burning of innocent property first because it's an either or, only because.
Well, even Jesus said that you shouldn't store your possessions in a barn because if that barn burns down, then you lose your possessions. You store them up in heaven, right? So if we're going to make the Christian argument, let the possessions burn because it doesn't matter about those things. That's right. We're going to make the Christian argument. That's what I can't do. I was raised Christian. I read the Bible back to front multiple times and did a lot of studying, and I find zero compelling arguments for how people are able to interpret and extrapolate these impossible justifications for racism and prejudice from Jesus, who was undoubtedly a very brown Middle Eastern man who didn't look like beautiful white Jesus like we know now. People don't want the truth. There's this thing where it's like, you can't handle the truth. They just want to believe what they've been believing because it's too hard to change. I get it. Change is very hard.
Clearly, well, you never saw Jesus Christ Superstar because correct. I know what Jesus looked like, and right. It's not the way you're describing it. He looked like you're Ted Neely, kind of like Ted Nugent almost. Yeah,
the deer overpopulated Christian. You know that we're just doing our best to keep the deer population down.
That's the real issue. That's really why we're here tonight to talk about the deer population. Somebody's got to do it.
Being met face to face with trauma and tragedy and seeing these things happen, the easier position is just to let it keep happening and pretend like it's not because it doesn't concern you. And I'm not really all that interested in this episode. And like, I always try to be diplomatic, and I suppose I won't specifically go for jugulars as much as I can or can't. But I'm really not interested in tolerating conversations that are proposing that we allow the murder and mistreatment of people of color or minorities simply because we as white people are too fucking lazy to consider our position in this country and how this country was built and structured and founded for free on the backs of slaves and abuse, that we just simply can't bother ourselves with accepting the fact that this is not about us, and we are being called, if people are called to a higher power, are we being called now to a higher cause to support and stand with people who are suffering, who are being victimized, who are being abused, who are being hurt, that it is not about the looters, and it's not about that kind of violence, and it's not about, yes, those things are happening, just like there's a bunch of fucking bad cops, even though there's a bunch of great cops, right? Everybody always makes that argument. Well, these are just 2 or 4 bad cops, but the whole force is fine. Sure, I get it. But if you're willing to make that argument in justification for you feeling like all you want to do is turn the television off and go to sleep and ignore that the world is basically on fire and that you have no part of this, then that's where you're going to be. And people who want to live in ignorance, it is not bliss, I can assure you that. But what can we do to reach those people other than try to make an impassioned plea and say, listen, everybody who bleeds red is your brother or sister. or sibling or whatever it is. And an attack on one of us is an attack on all of us, regardless of our color or our religion or our ethnicity or our gender or orientation. And I'm tired of pretending like people's fragile bullshit existence is so valuable that we have to keep tolerating the fact that they stand for nothing when the people who have everything to lose are in the street fighting to lose that or win it as we speak. So I'm like, I can't, yeah. There's a lot to be said, and I'm sure I sound like a crazy white liberal. But I'm happy to die on that sword if that's what that means.
Yeah, look, I think that look, it's why we're doing this, so that you know, because it is very difficult to express these points on Twitter, and you know, you have people you know, that have their agenda and their points, and look, it's I hope that good conversations come out of this. It seems like right now in particular it's a very hard time. And you want more than just a good conversation. I understand that, but it's like that is kind of how the change starts, is if you can talk about it instead of yelling at each other, which is definitely what we're you know, going out of our way to not do. And I think to that end, I wanted to have some fun with the comments in the chat for a moment. No, this is just earlier. This is earlier. I already read this one. They're burning down businesses all over the country. You don't give a flying fudge. That was Sean. And I loved this response from Jacob Downey. Wait, does the fudge fly and I have to hunt it? Or does eating it make me fly? Or is the fudge in style, i.e. fly fudge? Or would that be EL fly fudge? Of course, a reference to Keebler's EL fudge.
Yeah.
And he wraps it up with, I like fudge. So that's my kind of person. All right. I'm not saying that Sean American Patriot is neither a Sean, neither an American nor a Patriot. I'm sure he's all three of those things. Jacob Downey is my kind of person. He's my kind of Bladtcast viewer / listener. He's who I want. I interact with him a lot on Twitter. I love Jacob Lee Downey, that he's able to make the fudge jokes that we're all afraid to make right now. And I don't know. I appreciate it. I appreciate people who can find the levity, and I just wanted to share that because our audio only listeners are not going to see any of that. So,
I mean, I think like we, you know, I appreciate finding the levity too, but there's also a wit's end, and I think that we're seeing that. And like, I want to, obviously, the Bladtcast is like not usually this place, but like a lot of people are mad. I'm mad, and I think that sometimes it's important that we recognize that it's hard to find the levity in what's happening right now. It's hard to find the levity in people being killed in the streets. It's felt hard to find the levity in 4 cops not being arrested and it taking hundreds of people to be arrested just to try to get a handful of cops arrested for fucking killing somebody. That like, I'm not trying to be the shit right now and circumvent everything that the podcast is for, but it's not okay. And I don't want to alienate our audience either, because everybody knows that I'm usually this guy. But I'm just asking people to fucking look inside themselves and think for 2 seconds about how hard this is for everybody else around you who doesn't look like you, and what that means. And yeah, I don't know. It's important that we instill that. I actually don't really want to leave this conversation on like a funny haha note. I want people to not get sleep over this.
Yeah, and you know, I didn't think we were. Look, we're only an hour and 8 minutes into it. We're at least 3 more hours left of talking. So we weren't leaving on a funny note. I was just sort of injecting it in there.
No, I know that. I'm just saying I came here ready to go, and I think that.
Well, look, I didn't come here to cause no trouble. I'm just here to do the Super Bowl shuffle. But look, there's a lot of it that obviously, you know, I was talking about like the guy stealing Legos, but there's things that you see and you actually can't help but laugh when the guy stole the ATM and tried to bring it on a city bus. I don't know if you guys saw that one.
I did not see that one.
Yeah, and I'm like, all right, you know what? You got me. I didn't think anything was going to make me even smile, and I'm like, that guy is just like, well, I have this is my ATM now, and I don't know what he thinks he's going to do with it. You know how he's going to try to get that. So Peter Scrimshaw, I hadn't seen in the chat earlier. Been listening since the late 50s because we've been doing this. We've been doing this show for 70 years. No, I think he means episode number 50s. This is what Bladtcast is for, is what he's saying. So I always assume Uvula Scrimshaw is a he. I feel like what's that, Jeff?
It'd be a girl. If it was a girl, it'd be Uvula.
So it's a little clunker. Anyway, so look, I don't. It's look. Every once in a while, we'll do an episode where we talk about politics and things like that. And God, like 4 years ago, there's one where it was called something like the one where the guys alienate half the fan base. It wasn't quite that, but it was something like that. And for the most part, it turned like people who didn't agree were like, yeah, but I still like those guys. And, I don't know. I think they appreciate it. Obviously, Sean doesn't like the way that we're talking about the president. I don't like the way that he talks about.
Do we know this person outside of just this chat right now?
I don't, but that's okay. That's okay. Look, anybody who's sticking with us and watching us, I appreciate anyone doing that. And I'm choosing to share some of his comments in the chat, and Sean mentioned that he's a combat veteran, and I will say that I appreciate your service. And also the conversation, you're yelling a lot, but that's okay.
Who else was a combat veteran? John McCain, and he got captured, which makes him weak.
Yeah, I mean, obviously.
Right?
I mean,
that's how we feel about people who served. I thought
Donald Trump loves combat veterans because he doesn't like people who are caught captured. That's right. So,
right. Do we want to talk about anybody else in the McCain family, or should we move on? I think we should move on. Anyway, I made Will laugh. Look at that. I made Will laugh. See?
I would love to hear her response to this. It's got to be the dumbest shit coming out of her mouth. I can only imagine. I have not watched anything she's done in a long time.
She's on The View, and I do see a lot of what she has to say, actually.
Is it as dumb as I expect it to be?
Just clips and stuff, I was actually going to send one to you. It was finally an hour and 12 minutes in, we finally got derailed and completely off topic. But it was a clip from the show. I don't even know what the headline was, but she retweeted it because it was just a really bad screen grab of her where, she was just like making like an awful face and her mouth was wide open. And she's like, oh, come on, really? So it was like about the picture. And I actually meant to send that to you. Anyway.
Love it.
So I don't I don't think any of us, the three of us I'm talking about, feel great right now about where any of this is headed. I was trying to figure out, because I didn't live in LA when the LA riots happened, and I think you understand that a little bit. Like, it's easier to connect the dots. That's like police beat up a guy, police go on trial, they all get off, everybody loses their shit and starts breaking everything because they're just enraged. And I try to see this as not being different than that, even though it wasn't local. So I'm just like trying to figure out, well, how did that end? What did they do? When did people finally stop? Like tomorrow, I don't know, where are they going to be? Where is there going to be a peaceful protest? And, like 2 miles away, a different group of people are like, well, that's clearly where we're going to break shit and we're going to steal stuff, and at some point, what do you do to, I was talking about it earlier. Like, what do you do to stop the looting? I don't think they should stop the protests. We've kind of talked about the protests and the looting in particular. Those are different. Can you stop it? And maybe it is a little bit, the president did tweet out all caps law and order. and a very funny retweet from Ice-T, whom you probably know is on Law & Order SVU, and he was like, "Oh, this motherfucker, ... just dragging the name Law & Order into it. But I don't know what the fix is for that aspect of it. And on Instagram, I jokingly said that we were going to solve all the world's problems tonight. And then I said, just kidding. But I mean, is there anything that seems like a reasonable response? Go ahead, Jeff.
I have something really insulting to say that came to me that's probably going to piss a lot of people off, but it's just like, it's something that sticks in my craw sometimes, right? So when people announce that they're a combat veteran, that's lovely. But what did you, like, just because you fought doesn't mean anything. What did you fight for? Did you fight for freedom? Did you fight for the right to protest? Then support it. You know who else was a combat veteran? Adolf Hitler. He fought in World War I, and he went on to be a not very good person. So it's not the mark of your superiority or a show of how wonderful you are because you've been devoted to a country. What do you stand for? That's all.
I'm just shocked by your hot take that Adolf Hitler was not a good person. I've known you, Jeff. I've known you.
To offend some people, but I had to say it.
Jeff, I've known you for like 5+ years, and just now I'm like, oh, I had you pegged all wrong. Yeah, and look, that's Jeff's opinion. Sean is entitled to respond to that. But look, I think that it's, I don't know. Will back to the earlier point about. Is there a way forward that makes sense? Whether it's followed or not is not the point, really.
I don't think that's an easy answer. I mean, a way forward that makes sense requires people to surrender the ego and be willing to listen to things outside of themselves, to understand how to make real and lasting change. And I love.
So you see what's going on in
the comments.
Well, Sean did fight for America, and he stands for freedom. I'm not gonna.
But show the next one.
Well, I'll get to the next one in a second. But I'm just see the reason why I've got this one is that I endorse fighting for America. I also I mean, look, I stand for freedom in the way where I support freedom. I've never stood with a firearm where I'm defending freedom in any respect, but I definitely support it. I'm pro freedom, which I know is another hot take. But then he did say this to Jeff: "Go fuck yourself."
No, I think that's about me.
No, it was definitely a Jeff. It was definitely Jeff said that he didn't care about. And then Hitler fought for essentially socialism. Yeah,
my favorite.
So, yes, and that
I'm convinced we're being trolled, you guys. So we should probably
But once Jeff said that, I wanted to make sure that
I said it to troll him back. That's
fine.
Because I assumed that wouldn't make him feel too good about himself.
No, nor should it, And Sean said that he's watched 40 Bladtcasts. So Sean's.
He didn't say that. He said he watched 40 Bladtcasts.
It's
a show that we don't even do. We don't even do that show.
Bladtcast is great with the strokes. We're wonderful with the strokes, Market.
We are great.
Strokes can't speak right. We love them. We do great with them.
We do.
I was just looking for that one from before so that people could see it, but now I'm not. I'm just not finding. Oh, wait, there it is. So that's why Will's saying that for those of you watching. But look, I know what he meant, Sean. Look, I'm just here talking, and I mean, what does that mean? Come to Virginia. I've been there. They say Virginia's for lovers, so that must be Sean. So hang on. I know that Virginia's for lovers. So I think Sean's hitting on.
Ohio is for lovers. How dare you? What's that emo band?
What is for lovers?
So there's this Ohio is for lovers. That's a song from some emo band. I don't know.
Yikes! If Ohio is for lovers, how do you explain Paul P? But again, we've gotten really deep in the weeds here. And I look, it's like gun violence, mass shootings and things. I don't expect it getting solved this week. I
guess I don't understand why people can't collectively come together over the fact that people are murdered with weapons that we probably don't need, or entire groups of people are targeted by law enforcement systemically over time. That's also a fact. We have somebody in here being like, this is a fact. It's like, well, this is also a fact.
No, they were not facts. They were facts.
You're right, with an X. I all my life thought that the Christian upbringing that I had was about teaching peace, love, and understanding, and do unto others as you would want done unto you, and all of those things that I'm very, very, very confused. I think it's why I became disillusioned and left that way of thinking, because it is not actually about love, and it's not actually about changing anything. It's not about helping people. It's about keeping the status quo out of fear. And the fear is put into us by churches, by leaders, and we're fed a narrative, a circular narrative about why it's actually not fear. That's actually the truth. We are actually the victims of a covert, deep, what's it called? Deep state conspiracy where we are actually the victims. And it turns out that this whole thing, that actually people of color are aliens and they came to the planet to orchestrate this. Like, at what point does everybody stop and go, this is fucking crazy, and we should just love each other and fucking pump the brakes? Like, why do you care? Why does it matter if two dudes can get married? Why don't you just like live your life and go to bed and just wake up and like do stuff? I don't understand why everybody's individual, like, entire sense of self is wrapped up in the notion that we should have to fight for minorities and people of color. That's
Will, you talked about how you read the Bible, so you clearly don't remember, and I know you've never heard this before, but it's Adam and Eve, not Adam and Steve. I don't know if you've heard that, but it's right there.
That's Genesis 1 verse 2 through 4.
Oh yeah, but that's Genesis once Phil Collins started singing, so obviously that's going to be a little bit more gender fluid. With Peter Gabriel, it made a little bit more sense. Yeah, but my point is, I feel like I am not that far out on a limb when I said we're not solving racism this week. I don't know. No, I know. I'm just saying
nice all the time.
Let's solve the stuff we can solve, which is to, get people to stop breaking store windows. I mean, all these, and that I was talking about it on the local level.
Conversation about that, about being like, well, actually, at the end of the day, it's like we should just stop looters. It's like, no, people need to reconsider their whole existence in order to be able to effectively create change that benefits not just people of color, but all of the country and the world. Like, that is the bigger conversation. I know that I'm like constantly pushing it towards this sort of extreme way of thinking, but I'm kind of, I'm not interested in just having the PC version of this conversation.
Look, some people know that I have a show that I do for AfterBuzz TV called The Trump Report. It's usually Tuesdays at 11 a.m. Pacific right now. The whole network is unplugging tomorrow, so we won't be doing the show tomorrow. I've learned while we're on the air. And, when we were sort of talking about economic recovery early in the pandemic, one of my co-hosts, a delightful woman named Chelsea, I adore doing the show with her. I was just like, well, people who have like service industry jobs, the $1,200 stimulus check isn't, that's, not enough for even the 1 week they get it. And it's like, well, what we need to do is we need to change the system and, make sure that people are taken care of. And I'm like, yeah, but that's not going to happen soon enough for that person that already blew through that $1,200 check. And I'm talking about people who use it responsibly, So it's like there are these big issues that need to be fixed. And I talked about gun control, and you want there to be something where something like Sandy Hook never happens again, and not in the way where I don't even not in the way where Alex Jones says it didn't happen in the first place. I mean, where it actually doesn't happen again. So, and you want there to be these fixes, but it's like, well, what can you do right now? I mean, I was very encouraged before the weekend about the idea that California was starting to open up, I think slowly, and at least trying to be responsibly. I walked by Bob's Big Boy in Toluca Lake, and there were people eating inside, and it was really actually jarring at first. And I'm like, oh my God. And there were people waiting to get their hair cut outside Fantastic Sam's. And that's obviously not my number one issue right now, but it's something I've been thinking about for a while, that it has been almost 5 months since I've cut my hair. And one day I would like to get it again. So you start to see things like that. And it was encouraging. And then it's like, oh, okay, these businesses really shouldn't be open because there's this threat. And I think any kind of healing that can happen, that's the stuff that can happen first. I don't know who helps there be real change. I don't think it's, of the 535 elected losers we have between the House and the Senate, I don't know, are 20 of them good? I don't even know. They can't do enough is my point. So you need real change. And I think that people who legitimately are radical, like anarchists, like burn down the whole system, they think the radical change maybe could help this. And I don't see that as the fix either. So I don't know what the big fix is. That's why I keep focusing on the little stuff. Like, how can we get so that there's not a curfew every night? I'm actually not reading the chat because it's very distracting. So we can address some of it if we like, but so I'm focused on the stuff I can.
It's so good. Imagine having such a small baby ego that let one comment own your entire life.
Christian is mid plea, and we just fucking derailed it.
We all read the same thing. We all read the same thing.
Hey, I know.
We said we were gonna do it. Fuck it, we're gonna do it live, and now this.
I know. Well, that was the conversation too. It's like, oh, should we do it live? And I was like, sure, let's include people in the chat. I thought maybe our friend Sam Whitfield might be here live.
You said we were going to talk about a thing that nobody wants to hear us talk about. We know our listener base. Everyone's like, ugh, they're going to do a live chat about something that doesn't have to do with us being fortunate. Like, we're not going to watch that.
Jacob Downey, remember, was here before us. He's still here. Sean, for all the back and forth with Sean, has been here, I think, this whole time. And he's still here.
I love nothing more than a hate listen or a hate watch.
Yeah. I don't have time for it in my life.
I am only gonna do this because I hate you. Like, let your hate run through you. It's hilarious to me. And thanks for sticking around, Sean.
Look, he's I just wish that I could monetize these people that are watching for this long. I wish this was this is where I. Yeah, by the way, anybody who thinks that we should do a Patreon, this is what it would be like. We'd be paying for this show. Not like the fun ones that I would give away for free where we talk about comics and stuff. No, these are the ones that you get to pay for. You want to give me $5 a month? We'll do this.
Will you please put the newest comment up? Will you please post the latest? This is going to go on YouTube, and I want people to see
this
it.
One?
I
don't like you, Jeff, and Will is a pussy too.
I know.
Right, to be fair,
honestly,
Jeff,
tell me something I don't know.
I'm really impressed that he actually knew how to use the proper use of TOO. Like, I'm genuinely surprised based on everything we've seen to this point. Jeff, I mean, he missed an apostrophe on "don't," but it's okay. I'll forgive
Jeff, the real reason we're here tonight is that we did want to make sure that Will knew he's a pussy. This is a pussyvention, and I really thought it was about time.
I did call Trump a pussy, so I guess I have to get one of those lobby back against me. And I know we're not supposed to say that, so this is its own problem. So
if this was a funnier one, you'd have to call it pussy galore. But
I love China.
or the China? I don't know. Anyway,
Look,
that's the point. That's what the point I was trying to make before is just like, yeah, what can we fix? Like, what can be a little bit better tomorrow? And where then, okay, I'm not saying that we want to make this issue go away, but I would really like to know where we're at with the global pandemic, which has very, very quickly been forgotten. There's a lot of people that are posting pictures like, okay, so the Rona is not out there anymore. And you just see some of the crowds. And regardless of what you feel about the cause, there are a lot of people standing very close. Plenty of them have masks on. You see a whole bunch that don't. And I'm not even talking about states where, they are further along in the recovery. I'm just talking about in Los Angeles. You see crowds and you're like, okay, you have the mask on, but you're like 80 people deep, in a throng. So, I don't know. It's, how do we go ahead? Will.
I'm just caught up in the comments. Everyone knows that someone named Sean, American Patriot, is just here to troll us, right? There's literally nothing about this that actually says, like, I'm a real guy who had these experiences.
His name might as well be Sean, real person.
His new comment, Christian, highlight the latest comment.
You want me to read this one?
China. Like how Trump says it. Like, I don't understand.
But I thought it was China.
I don't understand.
China. Yeah.
What is going on? Like, I honestly think that, like, even though it sounds like we're shitting on this person, like, I think we're being trolled by some kind of bot. None of it feels real. It's very strange. Oh, look at that.
Yuba the Scrimshaw is disappointed there's no Patreon. I'd be good for Slurpees for everybody or something. We'll talk.
I'll take a Slurpee.
Matt and KC should never spend another cent on us again, but he's our ultimate Patreon. It'll be interesting because this episode is going to get posted on YouTube because not everybody's up at midnight Eastern. It's 1:30 on the East Coast now. Yeah. So obviously people weren't staying up for this. And there were even people who were like, oh, I'm looking forward to watching it tomorrow. I got a couple of those messages. People were like, oh yeah, I mean, not staying up for you guys. And nor do I expect people to, I just thought it might be interesting. And look, we've gotten a lot more mileage out of the chat than I thought we would when we started. So
for 2-3 guys.
Yeah, but that's all right. I don't know. So in terms of what could be different tomorrow, Jeff DeRay, is there anything encouraging, or do you feel like we're still on a steep downward decline and shit's going to be even more real tomorrow, Tuesday?
I hope that it stays real. Honestly, like whatever inconvenience this brings to my life, I would rather that than because sirens blaring and shit going on. Obviously, I'm not saying that in terms of condoning looting and violence and the destruction and everything. I won't condone that because no one is, or no one who's the majority aren't. But like, if people want to protest and shut down highways and do whatever it takes, like, good. The message needs to continue, because if we stop it, it's just going to turn into another fucking internet meme of like, remember that weekend we all protested and got sick? That would be the worst possible outcome of this to me. It's like, I love seeing white people, play the white fucking hero or whatever, throwing themselves in front of black people, because it doesn't come across as much about just being like, look, I'm a white person saving you. It comes across more as like, this person is like, yeah, hit me instead, man. I don't stop it. There seems like a lot of these people are doing it from a very genuine place, and that makes me happy. But if this just turns into another thing where white America lets this go like it was another fad soon enough because we get bored of just repeating the same talking points, then this will have been for naught, and it will happen again, like it has happened time and time again.
So I agree with everything you just said, and I do think that the most likely scenario will be on June 1st next year. People see their Facebook memories and was like, oh yeah, remember when we gave a shit about black people? Yeah. Oh, that was the worst. I couldn't I couldn't go to the Apple store at the Grove, and I had an appointment with the Genius Bar, and they told me they were closed. I saw somebody that was like posting about how mad they were that they got to Walmart and they were closed. To the Walmart in Burbank, because it was like, well, yeah, but it's like everything closed. It wasn't just Walmart decided to screw you over. It's like everything's closed. And yeah, I mean, look, I think that the idea that it continued to be uncomfortable is fine. And I'm not even saying that tomorrow is when things need to happen. But at some point, I don't know. I've talked about on this podcast before. I'm a few days away from spending a month down in Orange County. So yeah, I mean, whatever happens in LA, happens in LA. Obviously it's somewhere very near and dear to my heart, but screw you guys. I'm going home, to quote the great Eric Cartman. No, I don't. Yeah. But I'm also mentioning it now because I don't want people to think next week like, oh, I see why he left. I just want to remind everyone that I said weeks ago that we're in the middle of our self-quarantine and we're going to go down in the beginning of June.
That makes sense.
I just want people to know that that's why I'm going.
I just want, before I give my 2 cents about what we can change, to read.
Can we point out that Jeff is the American Justin Trudeau?
No. I want to read these comments.
But with I want that one. Justin Trudeau.
Can we please highlight the compliment? Thank you, Will.
He's a very handsome gentleman.
Nice.
My whole thing was I was going to say, I want to read Sean American Patriot's comments with Peter Griffin's voice. That feels very appropriate.
I wish we break Watto out for this.
Jeff is a sad person. He dislikes his white heritage. How about putting some black shoe polish on your face, Jeff? Jeff is the American Justin Trudeau. I feel your pain, Jeff. We are at that level with those comments. But I want to say what can we change about tomorrow? Or what can change tomorrow?
And by tomorrow, it's not literal tomorrow. It's more like general, like,
oh, I know.
The sun will come out tomorrow. Bet your bottom dollar that tomorrow there'll be sun.
The thing that can change is you.
Me?
No, not you specifically. The proverbial
it's too late.
Listening, but you're part of it. Just everybody needs to get their head out of their ass for a second and not make this about them and realize that this is so much bigger. And I mean mostly white people. I don't think there's anybody who's a person of color who's like bristling at that comment, who's like, oh, me? I think that it's.
Wait, so Will, you're not saying that it's the people of color who need to change? That's not what you're saying?
Our audience is very sarcastic and is happy to construe things however they want to construe them. So I'm trying to make it as clear and specific as I possibly can. You can change tomorrow if you're willing to listen to voices and hear things that are different from you and what you've experienced and felt, and be willing to have the empathy to open your mind and your heart to the struggles of others. And just because they have had struggles doesn't invalidate your struggles. It just means that your struggles have not been defined by the color of your skin and all of the things that have built to this moment. That what we're seeing is just like, to Jeff's point, if we just try to sweep this under the rug in some way, which the president has been trying to do. Yes, Sean, American Patriot, we're back to Trump bashing, saying that this is like, you know, he pretended like COVID was like not a thing for a super long time. He's like, it's actually, I said it was the worst thing forever, but I don't know, somebody told me it's actually a robot. It was a Chuck E. Cheese version of me playing a guitar that was singing a song about how this wasn't dangerous. I don't know who that was. We have the tremendously most inefficient, ineffective leadership that we could have ever fucking had to usher us through a pandemic, dragging us through the mud to reach a point where there's all of this unrest, civil unrest, because of the killing of innocent black men and women that have brought us to a place where he's then accusing them of being thugs and suggesting that they are domestic terrorists. Meanwhile, he's never going to condemn a group of fucking neo-Nazis, despite one of those dudes plowing a car into a group of peaceful protesters and killing a girl, as being bad, because it's bad on both sides. You guys know
Was that in Virginia?
Yeah. Oh,
interesting.
Interesting. By the way, go get a shot of testosterone, Will. You're a bigger pussy than I thought. That's
But it's not you're a bigger pussy. It's your, as in you possess a bigger pussy than I thought.
Pants down, shoot. Anyway, I honestly, what can I say besides asking people? I can't ask people anything more than to have a heart and think outside yourself, look outside yourself, be vulnerable, be empathetic. Listen to people who say they're struggling. You feel like you're struggling too. Well, so are they. Listen, we can be in this together. That's the thing, is I think that we've invented this narrative that we have to be at odds. That like, if you're for this, it means you're against this. And that's not true at all. We can be in this entire thing together, because like, if one of us doesn't matter, then all of us don't matter. And I know that the argument is like, well, all lives matter, but it's like, well, all lives can't matter until Black lives matter. So like, we are literally in this together, and you're either for it or you're against it. And you don't want to be against it because that kind of makes you look like an asshole. Why don't you be for human rights? Why don't you be for compassion and love and empathy? Why don't you be for that? Because what's the alternative? Staying the same, staying in your house, being stuck, drinking the same beer, doing the same shit, pretending like it doesn't affect you, pretending like it doesn't matter. It matters. Regardless of what you think your position in this equation is, it's there. And you're either going to be on the right side of this or the wrong side of it. And I encourage you to have the compassion to be on the right side. And I suppose that I should call that my last argument of the evening.
I often find that it's like the people that are genuinely strong, like physically and mentally, are the kindest people, because they have nothing to prove by tearing other people down. They know that there's a lot of greatness in them, so they only want to see others raised up. They want to be kind. They want to share that with other people. Like the people that want to be mean and spiteful, it's like, it's clear that it's because you feel like less than and shitty inside, and there's some part of you that feels like you need to build on others by being like, I'm not compassionate, I don't care about them, I'm so tough and great because I only care about me. And it's just like, you realize that you're like that little chihuahua yapping, and you're letting us all know that you're scared shitless and pretending that it's like a big bad bark. It's just not fooling anyone.
The only thing tough about us is truly our ability to be vulnerable. Being a fake tough, strong person or whatever it is actually not a trait. Your ability to recognize your flaws and be humble enough to change and be better. He who is exalted will be humbled, and he is who is humbled will be exalted, right? Another Jesus quote. It's easy. It's simple. Why don't you listen?
Who's this Jesus guy you keep talking about? You know I'm not from Mexico.
I don't know, but people love him. A couple people like him.
This his partner that you keep quoting, I will not have any more.
The important takeaways from the chat are Jacob Downey saying things like, this has been a blast. This has been a blat of a blast. Blast of a Bladtcast. Yeah, going with that one. You know, I mean, that's really what it comes down to. But Will, you'll enjoy this one. Christian, thank you for allowing free speech.
No.
We should. No. Can we charge him so that it's not free speech?
Yeah, it's not free speech. You do
allowing free speech
on Patreon. Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, we're allowing free speech. We're just not saying that speech is necessarily intelligible.
Yeah. I don't. I can't believe that in an hour and 43 minutes we fixed the world. We solved racism. We cured the coronavirus.
When three white men come together, our power.
Well, here's the other thing that we did was we fixed Star Wars. Everybody likes Last Jedi and Rise of Skywalker just as much now once we explain both of those movies to them. Everybody's on board with everything now. I just didn't think we could do it. I'm sorry. Sean knows how to make sure we get his comments read. I like you a lot. Fuck you guys. I like you a lot. You were very funny and smart. Great job. I'm gonna just leave
Christian, I like you a lot. You are very funny and smart. Great job.
if the president said that to me, that would be my ringtone. I don't, and that's any president.
Honestly, after this next election, he's going to be on Cameo, so I'm sure you could pay him $45 to do that for you.
Hmm.
I think he'll cost at least as much as Caitlyn Jenner, which I think is $1,000. I've bought a few cameos for
Have
friends.
you? Oh.
Yeah, like $50 here and there.
What is Gene Simmons' cameo? Is he on Cameo?
I don't think he's on, but why wouldn't he be?
Right?
Yeah. Do you think if we did a Bladtcast cameo and we charged like $1?
Yeah.
Do you think
it's happening right now. Sean says, "Kick these other two guys to the curb. Invite me on the Bladtcast." Will you invite him on the Bladtcast?
Oh, I don't even know how technology works.
That's the ultimate cameo.
I gotta say, like, there's definitely like a curious voyeur part of me that wants to know if he speaks as ineloquently as he writes.
He could be like the most well-spoken person in the world, and he's just not great at typing.
He's dyslexic.
Very heated and types too
Sean,
fast.
American dyslexic patriot. Okay.
Let's not shit on people with dyslexia.
This is
that would be if that was the case, it makes sense.
This is my favorite, Jeff. The angry, just hyper focused on one person right now.
Well, there's only one person that could draw our ire.
Yeah, and it's Matt and Casey for not being in this chat.
Fuck you, Matt.
Fucking Casey.
It's only 12:46 a.m. in Kansas City. Where is he? No, I was trying to say this before. Like, you know, we've got these handful of people that are in here live. The comments that we'll get tomorrow, and then when the audio version is posted, I think that this conversation is going to go on for a while. If I had to guess, but Will, I appreciate you not getting drunk and saying anything that would have derailed this whole conversation.
Well, I only get drunk when I know we're talking about nonsense. Which is 99% of the time. Which is 300 and what are we on right now?
This is 386.
387 other Bladtcasts.
Yeah.
This one got 86.
Except for the episode where we talked about Amazing Spider-Man 2. That required me to be very sober.
That was 2 hours and 15 minutes, that episode.
Right.
And I think that what Jacob Downey is saying that lives, it sounds quiet there in Van Nuys now. Do you feel like that everybody went home? Or
I hope so. Well, I mean, they were arresting people right away at 6 o'clock. So I would think by now most of the people are off the streets. I haven't heard any sirens in a minute, but it's like, and I know it's like what you say is totally right. Like the rational belief is that nothing's going to happen because I have a history of getting away with actual crimes while dealing with the police. And that's very likely because of the way I look and conduct myself when speaking to a police officer, because of my white privilege, my guilty white privilege. But I last night was scared shitless taking Mary out to pee at night because I'm just like the very last thing that I want to deal with when I'm like walking right outside to let the dog pee is like one of the cops coming by with their little searchlights and flashing on me, because I have had them do that before on a night where the dog was like where we weren't on lockdown and everything. Like they just patrol this area. And so I'm just, I don't know. The last thing I need is I literally tell Natasha to stay here and watch by the balcony in case something did happen, like somebody could take the dog or call somebody or something, because it's nothing will likely happen, but it's like that's probably how all those other people felt. And you watch enough videos of people being arrested for unlawful assembly for breaking curfew, and it's just like how are people not storming the fucking city halls right now being like, this is an outrage, that is a violation of our civil rights? No, fuck that, because it's for black people, so we don't care.
Yeah, I think that what's really it's going to take is Karen is really going to have to take up this cause, and by Karen, as we established earlier, is really all of us. And I don't know. Here's what I'll say about the last almost hour and 50 minutes. we didn't make anything worse. You know, I don't think it's very hard to talk about all this stuff. And there's the narrative, I referenced it earlier, that if you're not talking about it, you know, that silence is deafening. I think that this proved why I don't talk about it, because I don't know how. I just want to, like Will was very eloquent, and I'm like, yeah, a lot like what Will says, but I can't, I don't have all that in me, you know. I just, it'd be great if people could love each other more, and then when things happen, sort of a very quick uniform, like, oh yeah, this is definitely what shouldn't happen. And I don't know, last week I thought that, like, okay, this one has been handled better than usual, but that bar is set so low that we are where we are now.
Yeah.
And
this killing of an innocent black man was handled much better than all the other killings of innocent black men. That's the conversation that we're having.
No, I mean, that's where that's what I thought for a second.
That's what I mean. It's like, that is fucking crazy that's the conversation that we're having. That's what we have to acknowledge.
That's how low the bar is.
Correct.
Good job not just letting them get away with that murder.
I mean, think of all the times that, you know, the police in a situation like this were not fired, that no one was charged with murder.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. And by the way, just that there hasn't even been the trial yet.
Well,
so
and that's the thing. It's like, when people don't understand why people of color, minorities are upset, I mean, that's what else? What other proof do you need? That we're having this conversation as three straight white guys on a podcast trying to break down the troubles that the world is going through for people of color, and we get to say that, like, well, at least this time the guys are going to jail. It's like, that's not enough. That's why things are burning. That's why people are angry. That's why people are upset. Doesn't make it okay to be violent or to loot or whatever. But that's why there's some justification to that behavior, because it's like, it's really not enough. We have to be part of the solution and not be apathetic and not just sit and pretend like nothing's happening and ignore it and spend a blackout social media Tuesday pretending like it doesn't matter. It's on us. This is something that I've realized recently. We keep painting this narrative that it's like, it's on people of color to have to fight for their own freedom. And it's like, yeah, I guess that's part of the story, but it's also on us to help fucking let them have it. Why don't we just take a seat for a while and stop making it seem like they have to overcome us? Why is that the story? They don't have to. They are free. This is something that was supposed to be true in the Civil Rights Act in the mid-'60s, which isn't even that long ago. Like, this is something that is a fact. And if we can't get out of the way and allow ourselves to make space for people who are different than us, then it is not their fault or problem. It's ours. I guess that's the last thing I'll say.
Yeah. When we come back after halftime for the next 2 hours, yeah, I again, more eloquent than anything I feel like I can try to articulate, and I would love for, you know, a proverbial tomorrow, not the literal tomorrow, where it's like, oh, that really did make a change, you know, and I'm just not convinced that that's where this is. I don't know what stops, you know, what makes white people, you know, all the Karens feel like they can go to Walmart at 4:30 and not be angry that it's closed.
Education. People got to start reading books. Start reading books about race relations, about things that you don't understand about. Actually listen to black music and hear what they're saying. Actually watch black movies and stop pretending like they're PC movies. Like, Black Panther was a big uproar because there was only 2 white guys and they were both shitty. Oh, so it's fine when it's a group full of, like, white guys and the black guys.
Who said that Martin Freeman was shitty?
Everyone knows he's shitty.
International hero.
Yeah, exactly. We invented the narrative that to be a person of color means to be other than, and to eventually end up either being the villain or to be marginalized and not to be as important. And the occasional time that we're willing to put people of color in positions of power narratively or entertainment wise, we're like, oh, isn't it great that in this movie, like it stars a black guy, and you're like, no, it's 2020. That's not great. Like this should not be. We fall all over ourselves when we nominate like a black woman who's a director. It's like, oh, we didn't. Isn't it so good that we nominated her? It's like, no, this should be part of the conversation that we're having about equality, and people are not interested in having that conversation because it makes them feel uncomfortable. And the whole thing in life, to me, that's always been my motto forever in terms of working out, training, whatever it is. There's a difference between pain and discomfort. And you let pain heal, but you push through discomfort. And if this makes you uncomfortable, sorry, this is just discomfort. You got to fucking keep going and stick with it and see it through. This is not pain for you, white people. This is discomfort. And you have to stick through this and see it through. There's no other alternative to this as opposed to being part of the problem, which causes pain for people who are different than us. And we don't want to do that anymore.
I've seen enough conversations online over the last few days that these are the sort of things that specifically, yes, people of color, but specifically Black Americans, African Americans have these conversations all the time between themselves, amongst each other. But it's like, oh yeah, we can't make our white coworkers uncomfortable, so we just keep quiet about how much pain there is about these things, and obviously people aren't going into work right now. This literal time isn't necessarily the case, but because it's like, oh yeah, I mean, so we didn't bring it up in our 1 hour Zoom meeting. But yeah, just like, yeah, white people should be uncomfortable. These hour 55 minutes, I've been very uncomfortable, but wanting to try and, I don't know, have something better to say and, better way to figure out a way through it. And I just don't think that we're here. Uva the Scrimshaw has a compliment for me, but that's not actually why. That was really something to hear when Christian interviewed those two fans, both African American, to get a better understanding of what they had to say. There was a Black Panther episode of the Bladtcast. I talked to Alexis, who's half Black, and my friend Shalico, who's Black, just sort of like, I just was like, yeah, I mean, because we always, we talk about it, but I did want to get there. But to Will's point, yeah, Black Panther shouldn't have been such a big deal that it was like, oh my God, it's this superhero movie. And that's not just because you feel like there should have been a Cyborg movie before Justice League. I mean, it's just that Black Panther should not have.
Hey, at least we're getting the Snyder cut. Anything's possible now.
Who knows how much he's in there. Jeff DeRay, I know that literally it can be anything, but where do you want to go out on? Where do you want to leave this? Do you have a Jerry Springer final thought that you'd like to share?
I think that I'm sure it's going to fall on. I've found, like, upon more recent self-reflection, that I've become very misanthropic, meaning that I just don't like really believe in people very much. But I would like to see that changed by the zeitgeist changing and people's actions. And there's been a lot of things that have been very encouraging lately, and I'd like to see that built on. And I'd love to see everybody approach these types of situations and just every day thinking, like, how can I make things better for myself and everyone else instead of just myself? That'd be great. It'd be really great if this was the impetus for people to start caring and changing and looking at one another and how we can all serve each other, and those Christian values that we all are not, that so many of us purport, yet don't seem to stick to. So I don't know. I hope that, like kind of what Will was saying is that, change is uncomfortable. So if you don't feel good right now, that's a good thing. You can just embrace that and use it as a motivator to make things better.
Well, I don't think that this conversation will literally continue in this particular episode, but we're happy to interact with everybody that we mentioned. We'll be watching or listening to this after the fact. If if you strongly disliked this episode just because of the subject matter, just tell us why. Please tell us what you disagree with, or where it's like, you're within your rights to say like, yeah, I ducked out after 10 minutes because that's not what I come to you guys for. That's fine. I understand that. I just want to have that conversation too. I always want to know what people like and don't like. If anybody has any thoughts, constructive or otherwise, if you have destructive criticism, we will take that too. We've already aired some of it here during the course of the show. But I'm glad we had this conversation. I don't know how much the Bladtcast Nation, the Bladtcast Nation of millions to hold us back, as it were. I don't know. I hope they appreciated it too. But if they didn't, just remember that our previous episode, we really did a deep dive with Jeff Winstead talking about specifically his comic and comic books in general. And Wednesday night, I plan to do another comic book on bagging, where I look at a bunch of comics just as a distraction. I got a whole bunch of stuff that I have yet to really dive into. So, I feel like it's okay to occasionally do the thing that's the distraction. But it's fine if you don't want that either. But to continue that conversation,
I don't know if that's
also, sorry, Jacob Downey, relevant conversation. The next one will be about scotch and peanut butter. And can you pair scotch with Nutella? You can pair scotch with anything. I don't even need to weigh in with the guys on that. That seems like an undisputed fact. But if you want to keep the conversation going, you can follow at Will Sterling _ at Jeff DeRay. DeRay Jeff doesn't have much to say on any of this, right, Jeff?
I don't know who's saying what anymore. Yeah, whatever one's open, I'll tweet from it probably.
Wait a minute. You're both Jeff DeRay and DeRay Jeff?
The secret's out. You've been fooled this whole time.
Wait a minute.
I, Homer J. Simpson, am also Krusty the Clown. That was that actual abandoned plot line of The Simpsons long ago, which is why Krusty has Homer's exact face.
Well, I remember when Homer went to clown college, but I feel like we should do a whole Bladtcast on that and not try to steer this conversation into that. Let us know in the YouTube comments down below if you have any idea what the title should be for this episode, because right now it's just called Bladtcast 386 Live. I didn't want to try
steal from It's Always Sunny and be The Gang Saves the World.
The Gang Solves Racism. Like I said, I can't believe it only took us 2 hours. And you can continue the conversation with me if you like, especially Sean American Patriot, who says he likes me. I don't remember anything else he said all night. I just know he said he likes me. And you guys can have your issues with him, but he likes me.
I thought he liked it.
No, I don't think he likes you guys.
Will or I?
No, I think Will's a pussy.
Where'd that come from? I thought that was like the British saying, like, you're such a pussy.
But you can follow me at Christian DMZ, Bladtcast at Bladtcast, BLADTCAST, the Bladtcast on Facebook. Our next episode will be different than this. What that'll be, I'm not sure, but we will continue the conversation. Thanks to everybody who watched live, and I do mean everybody who watched live. That is all the time we have now. Yikes. Jacob Downey. I don't think I'm going to call it What a Riot, or don't, mostly don't. But thank you, Jacob. You've been here. This is 2 hours and 3 minutes in. You've been here for 2 hours and 5 minutes. Thank you so much. Revisit this topic in a month, Uviel Scrimshaw says. Yes, behind our Patreon wall. If you want this conversation again, we'll have the same conversation for $70 a person.
I'll be moving in a month.
Oh, I know. We'll have to talk about that. We'll have to this basically we'll have to have a farewell party that'll look just like this, where we're also teleconferencing. But that's all in the future. Hopefully there's a brighter one somewhere around the corner. And I mentioned Jerry Springer, and I feel like there's no other way to go out than with his old ending adage to take care of yourselves and each other. We'll see you next time on the Bladtcast.